Hello everyone, I am Loganathan from Loga QA Automation channel. Welcome back to the next video in our Python for Testers series. In this video, we will see the difference between instance variable and class variable. Also, we'll see the difference between instance method and class method. And also, we'll understand in the memory management what is static pool. Okay, all right. With that said, let me directly jump into the PyCharm. And let's go to the new test file in OOP basic. I'll name it as test3. So we understood how to create a class in the last video, right? So class, say let me name it as student. Okay, and let me create a function inside the student class and name it as def student details. Okay, so as you all know, it takes self by default. Any method that I'm creating inside the classes instance method, right? So this is instance method and it takes self as an argument. Okay, student details. Here what I'm going to do, so first I'll use the initialize also, def init self name and id. Let's take id and name. So this we already saw in the last class. Okay, I don't want to repeat it again. What is init method? There is double underscore init method, which is nothing but the dunder method and all. id and name. Good. So this is nothing but when the constructor is called, the init method will also get called, and then things will be stored here. Okay, so here I'm going to define another variable. Say I would like to name it as self dot fee. Okay, let me put this fee as self comma fee. Okay, and then I'm going to print this fee, print self dot fee. Then let me, for now I'll keep this hiding, I don't need this. And then I would like to create a variable called batch number, okay, or batch name, and I'll name it as morning batch. Correct. So what is this? This is class level variable, right? Class variable. And this is instance variable or object variable. All right. So how can we create an object for the student class? Simple. We need to create a variable obj student. I'll name it as 1 is equal to student of. And then when I do this, if I want to get this batch name outside the class, how can I get it? Very simple. I don't even need to create an object for it. I can directly, using the class name, I can call this, right? So for example, student dot batch name, and I'll print this, print student dot batch name. So for now I'll comment this, I'll run this program. You see that it says morning batch. So what do you understand from this? To access the class variable outside the class, I don't need to create an object. Instead, I can use the class name and then dot operator to access the variable inside the class as class variable. But if I want to access this, let me go with self and I'll say that student fee details is 1000. Okay, here if I want to access this fee variable outside my class, what should I do? Can I directly go with this print fee Let's see what is happening. It is throwing an error. What is the error? Object student has no attribute fee. So this doesn't have the attribute fee, it only has the attribute batch name. So then what I need to do, I need to create an object. So I create an object called object student1, and right. So here what I'm going to do, object student, let me print this. How can I print this? Dot the student detail, and when I run this, so I have to call the function. So I'll call this 1000 gets printed, and then none. Why is this none? Yeah, got it. I don't need to print it one more time. It is not returning anything. That is why it is printing none. Let me run this. So now it is printing 1000. What I'm doing, I'm with this object, with the obj student1 object, I am calling the function inside it, right? So that I can do, or I can do def initialize, right? Init. And then here I can say ID of the student, self dot ID is equal to 100 is what I'm defining. If I want to print this ID, what can I do? Obj student one of ID, and I can print it. Print so it prints 100, right? And if I want to change it, can I change it? Yes, say is equal to 200, and then if I try to print this, yes, it is getting printed. And if I want to change my class object, say here I printed it, but now I do equal to 300, or what is it? Batch name is morning batch, right? Let me give it as evening batch. I run this. Okay, morning batch, evening batch, and then 100, 200, 1000. So from this, what do you understand? Okay, so first I've created a class variable, and this class variable can be accessed outside the class using the class name dot the variable name, so it prints. And also I can modify it outside the class by doing the same class name dot batch name, and then I'm modifying it with new name, which is nothing but evening batch. Then I'm saying print student batch name. Next, I'm creating an object for this student class, right? For the student class, I'm creating an object. Using that object, I'm accessing the ID, which is nothing but the instance variable, and also what I'm doing, I'm modifying the ID from 100 to 200, and I'm printing it again. That is what you are seeing, that the modified value is printed. And finally I'm calling the function or method defined inside the class using the object. All right, so all these you have seen. So next is, can I use this batch name inside my user defined function? Yes, it is possible. How can I do it? I can use student dot class name dot print class name dot the variable name. Right, student dot batch name. So let me put this next, and I'll comment this overwriting part for now. Let me save this and run this, and you see that, or I'll comment all these so that it will be easy for you. Only the object creation I'll uncomment. Okay, let me run this. So it says morning batch and then 1000. Why is it saying morning batch? Because I am accessing the class variable inside the method. For that, what do I need to do? I should use student.batchname. What will happen if I simply put self.batchname? It is working. So I can use self.batchname to get the class variable value, but what is preferred? This is what is preferred. Now let us see how this is happening from the memory point of view. Okay, so let me go back to my PPT, and here we already have this boxes created. So the Python virtual machine will have stack memory, heap memory, and class area. And as soon as we create a class, so that is nothing but when we define a class here, it puts the entire class code here, right? That in the class area. So what is the class here? Student. Student is the class, and it creates a box, and then inside which all the code, line of code that I have written is put in here. So next is, since the student class has class variable, this is going to have a separate memory called static pool. In the heap memory, it will have a static pool. So in the static pool, first the class variable batch name will be created. So nothing but bn I say. Okay, batch name is equal to, what is the batch name? It is morning batch. So MB I'll put. Once this is done, whenever I am creating a object for this, the object is nothing but obj student1. This we have already seen, correct? So obj student1 os1. When this is created, two methods will be called. One is new, another one is initialize. New will create a copy of this and create a space. This is called initializing. This is called creating an object. Next is underscore init. Dunder method will kick in, and what this will do, this will create self dot variables. So here, what is the self variable? One is id, another one is fee. So let me go with self dot I, and then another one is self dot fee. So those things will be created. If I say self dot bn, what does it mean? Self dot bn. So this is also within this boundary only. Okay, so this is accessing this static pool. Every instance that we create will have access to the static pool, but the difference is this I and, that is id, self.id and self.fee will be copy pasted in the number of times that I create object. So now I have created only one object, so it is copy pasted once. If I create one more object, for example os2, then one more object will be created, and that will have I, that will have fee, that's it. That will have I and fee, but bn will not be there. Bn will be created only once. If I create one more object os3, what will happen? In the heap memory, it will create one more memory, and then it will copy paste I and F, that is ID and phi. So let me go back and then I'll clear this. So every time an object is created, the instance variables and instance methods will be copy pasted, but the class level variable or class level method I have not covered, I'll cover it. So class level variables or class level methods will be created only once in static pool, and whatever is created inside static pool, every instance object will have access to it. So that is why I'm able to access the batch name variable using self keyword. But the best practice is accessing it using the class name dot the variable name. The reason is this will clearly indicate that this is a class variable. Got it? Okay, nice. So with that said, let's move on and let's create a class level method. Okay, let me create a new file, test4, and here let me create a class student, and then first I'll create a variable, class level variable. So that variable I name it as batch is equal to morning batch. Okay, and then now I need to create a class level method, right? Class level method. So for that, what I need to do is I need to use a annotation or the decorator called class method. So nothing but this is decorator in Python. In other languages, this will be called as annotation. In Python, this is called as decorator. So the moment I put @class method, this becomes a class level function. Okay. So what I do, display class level. Okay. Then this takes CLS as argument. Make a point that takes CLS as argument. Now, if I want to access anything from the class, I can do in two ways: print cls.batch or print student.batch. So in both the ways I can access these variables. Okay. Next, let me create a regular method. Regular method is nothing but instance method. So display instance, I would name it as instance. And as you know, any method, instance method, takes self as an argument. So here I'll give the name as self dot phi is equal to 1000, and now I'll say that print self dot phi. But can I do print cls dot phi batch? It's already giving an error, but I'll show you what it is going to do when I'm running it. Print I can do student dot batch, I can do print self dot batch. Okay, this is preferred way to access class variable, and this is instance has access to static pool, so it works. And cls.batch, this will fail. Self.phi is instance variable, so I don't need to explain. Let me now go ahead and create a, okay, how can I call this method? Do I need to create an object? Not required. So student dot display class. But for calling this method, I should create an object. So obj is equal to student of obj dot display dot instance. I'll call only this, and I'll run this. CLS is not defined. So we know that this is going to give us the error. So that is happening. So let me comment this and I'll run this. Perfect, right? Morning batch, morning batch. Why morning batch, morning batch? Here it is printing morning batch, here it is printing morning batch, and then 1000 fee is printed, and after 1000 this is also working and this is also working. So what are we understanding from this? We can have class level method, but it has to be defined under the decorator @class method, and very importantly it will take CLS as an argument, and this CLS is pointing to the static pool address where this student class is created. So cls.batch means this is going to take this morning batch value, and when I try to print using the class name, even that works. And within the instance method I can access the class variable. For using the class variable I need to use either class name dot variable name or self dot variable name, but preferred way is class name dot variable name, and I cannot use the CLS keyword here. So this is what we understood from this example. One more, so since it has self dot fee, can I access fee here? For example, print say let me use CLS dot fee. It's not giving any error. Let's see when I run it what is happening. So it is throwing an error. Student has no attribute fee. So this will also error. What do we understand from this? So here I explained about static pool. You remember? So it creates static pool. And this is where class variable and class methods are going to sit. And here in object level instance objects are created. So instance space is created. From here it can access. So this is possible. Okay, but from whatever is here it cannot access. It is not possible. So from static pool I can access things into my instance object or instance variables or instance methods, but from instance method or instance variable, if I try to, so from my class variable or class method, if I try to access something within the instance, it is not going to work. The other way around is not going to work. Remember, that is what is happening in this example, right? So print cls.fee is not possible. Let's see. Print self dot fee is not possible because self, the word itself is not known here, so that will also give error. And simply print class name dot student dot fee is also not possible. See, student has no attribute fee. So what is it explaining us? It says from instance method you can access class variable, and also you can access class methods also. So for example, here I can use student dot display class, right? I can use this. So if I run it, it's again going to print morning batch, because here I'm printing morning batch, right? So this is possible, but I cannot call this display instance here, right? So for example, student dot display instance, it's, though I say it, it says it gives an error, unresolved reference. Let's see, student is not defined. Did you in student? Yes, of course. Let's see. Yeah, it is missing self. Why self is missing? I cannot pass because I'm not creating a object here. Only when I'm creating an object, a self can be passed. So this is also not possible. All right. So we are now clear with what is class variable, what is class method. Similarly, what is instance variable and instance method? Now I'll ask you a basic question: when to go for class variable and class method, and when to go for instance variable and instance method. Very simple. Say you have public data. Okay. Say what is meant by public data? Say your college name or address, college address, and then college registration ID. All these are public data, correct? And then private data. What is private data? Say student name, student ID, student, what does it say? Student name ID, email ID. Okay. So these are private, correct? So whenever you want to use private data, go for instance variables. Whenever you want to go for public data, go for class variables. And when to go for class methods? If you are going to use only class variables in a method, then go for class method. Okay. If you are going to use instance variable and or class variable, then go for instance method. Clear? So this is how you can decide when to use class variable and when to use instance variable, and when to use class method and when to use instance method. So understand and then use it. All right, we have come to the end of the video. Practice this. If you have any questions, post it in the comment. I'll try to answer them as soon as possible. Until next time, keep learning and keep growing. Take care. Bye.